Captain Jake Miller stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the stars through the large windows. The ship had been traveling for 3 months now, carrying 2,000 people to their new home on Kepler 442b. Among them were 400 children, all excited about starting fresh lives on a new planet. The ship was huge, almost like a floating city. Families lived in small apartments, children played in recreation areas, and everyone helped with daily tasks. Jake had been captain for 15 years, but this was his biggest mission yet. Moving so many people across space was not easy, but everything had gone smoothly so far. "Captain, we're picking up something on the sensors," said Lieutenant Tom Bradley from his station. "It's big, and it's moving toward us fast." Jake walked over to look at the screen. A massive shape appeared on the display, much larger than their own ship. "Can you tell what it is?" "No, sir, I've never seen anything like it. The design is completely alien." Jake felt his stomach tighten. In all his years of space travel, he had never encountered an alien ship. Humans had always wondered if they were alone in the universe, but now it seemed they had their answer. "Sound general alert," Jake ordered. "Get everyone to their emergency stations." Alarms began ringing throughout the ship. Families gathered their children and moved to safe areas. The ship's security team, led by Lieutenant Commander Kate Sullivan, prepared for whatever might happen. The alien ship was now visible through the windows. It looked like nothing humans had ever built. The hull was smooth and dark, with strange symbols glowing along its sides. It was at least 3 times bigger than the New Horizon. "Captain, they're trying to communicate," Tom said, adjusting his headset. "But I can't understand the language." Suddenly, the lights on the bridge flickered. All the control panels went dark for a moment, then came back on. But something was wrong. The ship's engines had stopped working. "What happened?" Jake demanded. "Sir, all our systems are being controlled by something outside the ship," Tom replied, his voice shaking. "We can't move, we can't fight back, and we can't call for help." Jake grabbed the communication device. "This is Captain Jake Miller of the human ship New Horizon. We are peaceful explorers traveling to a new colony. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." The response came in perfect English, but the voice was cold and mechanical. "I am Commander Vextai of the Zephyrian Empire. We have studied your species. You will cooperate with our requirements." "What requirements?" Jake asked, but there was no answer. Instead, parts of the alien ship began to glow brighter. Beams of light shot out and attached to the New Horizon. The human ship shook as something connected to its hull. "They're boarding us," Kate said through the communication system. "I can see them coming through the airlocks." Jake had never felt so helpless. His ship was trapped, his people were in danger, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The aliens moved through the ship quickly. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes. They wore armor that seemed to be made of the same material as their ship. Most frightening of all, they carried weapons that could stun humans without killing them. Jake watched on the security cameras as the aliens moved through the ship with a clear purpose. They were not interested in the adults or the ship's technology. They were looking for something specific. "Captain," Kate's voice came through the radio, filled with panic. "They're taking the children. They're going straight to the family areas and taking only the children." Jake's heart stopped. "How many?" "I count at least 50 so far. They're stunning anyone who tries to stop them." Jake ran from the bridge toward the family sections, but he was too late. In the main recreation area, he found parents crying and holding each other. Their children were gone. Emma Davis, only 8 years old, had been playing with her friends when the aliens came. Her mother tried to protect her, but the alien weapon made her fall asleep instantly. Emma was scared, but she tried to be brave as the tall gray beings carried her and the other children through the ship's corridors. 12-year-old Luke Thompson had been in the computer lab when the alarm started. He was smart for his age and understood that something terrible was happening. When the aliens found him, he tried to hide, but their sensors detected him easily. As they carried him away, he memorized everything he saw, hoping the information might help later. 10-year-old Maya Rodriguez was in the art room, drawing pictures of what their new planet might look like. She had always been creative and curious about everything around her. When the aliens took her, she was more curious than scared. She studied their faces, their equipment, and the way they moved. The aliens worked quickly and efficiently. Within 1 hour, they had taken 50 children from the New Horizon. They brought them all to their ship through the connecting tubes. Jake and Kate tried to follow, but energy barriers blocked their way. They could only watch as the children disappeared into the alien vessel. "Please," Jake called out to Commander Bextoy. "They're just children. They haven't done anything wrong. Take me instead." The alien commander appeared on the ship's main screen. His face showed no emotion. "Your young possess qualities we require for our research. They will contribute to scientific advancement. This is not negotiable." "You can't just take our children," Jake said, his voice breaking. "What kind of monsters are you?" "We are Zephyrians. We do what is necessary for progress. Your species is primitive. Your young will serve a greater purpose." The alien ship began to move away from the New Horizon. As it did, the human ship's systems came back online, but it was too late. The children were gone. Jake stood on the bridge, staring at the empty space where the alien ship had been. Around him, his crew worked to restore full power and communications. But all he could think about were the 50 children who had been taken from their families. Parents throughout the ship were demanding answers he did not have. They wanted to know when their children would come home. They wanted to know what the aliens planned to do with them. Most of all, they wanted to know why this had happened to them. Jake activated the emergency communication system. It would take hours for the message to reach Earth, but he had to try. Humanity needed to know that they were not alone in the universe, and that their first contact with aliens had been a nightmare. Admiral Rick Harrison was eating breakfast in his office on Earth when the emergency message arrived. The red light on his desk started flashing, which meant something very serious had happened. He had been in charge of the United Earth Defense Fleet for 10 years, but he had never seen this particular alarm before. He pressed the button and Captain Jake Miller's face appeared on the screen. Jake looked terrible. His eyes were red and his voice shook as he spoke. "Admiral, this is an emergency transmission from the New Horizon. We have made first contact with an alien species. They attacked our ship and kidnapped 50 of our children. I repeat, aliens have taken 50 human children." Rick stood up so fast his chair fell over. In all his years of military service, he had prepared for many things, but never this. The message continued with details about the alien ship, the Zephyrians, and what had happened. When the message ended, Rick immediately called his senior staff. Within 30 minutes, the most important military leaders on Earth were gathered in the emergency meeting room. "This changes everything," Rick told them. "For the first time in human history, we have proof that we are not alone. And their first action was to steal our children." General Patricia Moore, head of military operations, leaned forward. "What do we know about these Zephyrians?" "Very little. But taking children is an act of war in any civilized society. We need to respond immediately." Rick ordered his best ships to prepare for launch. The warship Retribution would lead the mission, commanded by Captain Lisa Chang. She was known for never giving up and always bringing her people home safely. The destroyer Valkyrie, under Captain Tony Reeves, would join her. Tony was famous for his aggressive fighting style and his hatred of bullies. Both captains volunteered immediately when they heard about the mission. In fact, every captain in the fleet wanted to join the rescue operation. No one could accept that aliens had taken human children. Meanwhile, far away in space, the 50 kidnapped children were learning about their new prison. The Zephyrian research station called Kethmore was enormous, built inside a hollow asteroid. The children were kept in a large room with beds and basic supplies, but the door was locked and guarded. 8-year-old Emma Davis had become the unofficial leader of the group. Even though she was one of the youngest, the other children listened to her because she stayed calm and thought clearly. "We need to stick together," she told the others. "These aliens think we're just scared little kids, but they're wrong." Luke Thompson, who was 12 and good with computers, had been studying the room carefully. "Look at these walls," he said. "I think there are electronic systems behind them. If I can figure out how they work, maybe I can cause some problems." Maya Rodriguez was drawing in a notebook the aliens had given her. They thought she was just making pictures to feel better, but she was actually mapping everything she could. See? Every time the door opened, she memorized the hallway outside. Every time an alien guard walked by, she noted the time and direction. The Zephyrian scientist in charge of the project was Dr. Zixnara. She had studied many alien species before, and she believed humans were no different. Young beings from primitive worlds were usually frightened and easy to control. But these human children were acting strangely. They are not behaving as expected, she reported to Commander Vextai. Most captured young become quiet and obedient within days. These humans are organizing themselves. They are primitive, Vextai replied. Continue with the research. Their neural development patterns will prove valuable regardless of their behavior. But Dr. Zixnara was beginning to worry. The children had developed a simple code using hand signals and facial expressions. They were sharing information about the guards, the station layout, and the daily routines. This level of cooperation was unusual for such young beings. Back on Hwayin, Earth Admiral Rick Harrison was preparing the largest rescue fleet in human history. 12 warships were being loaded with weapons, supplies, and the best soldiers humanity had to offer. Every person in the fleet was a volunteer who understood this was not just a military mission, but a moral one. Captain Lisa Chang stood on the bridge of the Retribution as her crew made final preparations. She had read every report about the alien encounter and studied the limited information they had about Zephyrian technology. Remember, she told her officers, we're not just fighting for those 50 children. We're showing the galaxy what happens when someone threatens human families. Captain Tony Reeves was even more direct with his crew on the Valkyrie. These aliens think they can take our kids and we'll just accept it. They're about to learn why that was the biggest mistake they ever made. The fleet launched from Earth, with the blessing of every world government. For the first time in human history, every nation was united behind a single cause. The message was clear. Attack human children, and you make enemies of all humanity. As the ships traveled through space toward the last known location of the alien vessel, Admiral Harrison sent messages to every human colony and outpost. The news spread quickly. Humans everywhere were angry and scared, but also determined. Their children had been taken and they would get them back. On the research station, the children were adapting to their situation in ways that surprised their captors. 6-year-old Alex Park had discovered that he was small enough to fit into the ventilation shafts. While the aliens thought he was sleeping, he was actually exploring the station and learning its secrets. Emma Davis organized the other children into groups with different jobs. Some watched the guards and learned their patterns. Others studied the technology around them. A few pretended to be sick or scared to distract the aliens during important moments. The Zephyrians had expected to find primitive, frightened young beings who would submit to their research without resistance. Instead, they found themselves dealing with an organized group of humans who refused to give up hope. Dr. Zixnara was becoming increasingly frustrated. Every time she tried to conduct experiments, something went wrong. Equipment would malfunction, test subjects would cause disruptions, or other problems would arise. She began to suspect the children were somehow responsible, but she could not prove it. These humans are more troublesome than anticipated, she reported. Perhaps we should separate them to prevent further coordination, but Commander Vextai was confident in Zephyrian superiority. They are children from a primitive world. Continue the research. Any resistance they show is meaningless. He would soon learn how wrong he was. The human rescue fleet was getting closer every day, and the children were becoming more organized and determined. The Zephyrians had made the mistake of underestimating humanity's most precious resource, their young ones. The hunt for the kidnapped children had begun, and nothing in the galaxy would stop the humans from bringing them home. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council had never seen anything like this before. Representatives from 40 different alien species gathered in the Great Hall on the neutral world of Centris Prime. The building was enormous, with each species having their own section designed for their particular needs. Ambassador Helen Foster walked into the hall representing humanity for the first time. She was a small woman compared to most of the alien delegates, but her presence filled The room. She had been Earth's top diplomat for 20 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The council chamber fell silent as she approached the speaking platform. Many of the aliens had never seen a human before. They whispered among themselves. Studying her appearance and movements, the council speaker, a tall blue creature called Mordain, called the session to order. We have gathered to address the incident between the humans and the Zephyrian Empire. Ambassador Foster, you may present your case. Helen looked around the room at the dozens of alien faces watching her. Some looked curious, others seemed bored, and a few appeared hostile. She took a deep breath and began to speak. Honored delegates, 3 days ago, the Zephyrian Empire committed an act that goes beyond warfare, beyond politics, beyond any acceptable behavior between civilized species. They kidnapped 50 human children. A murmur went through the chamber. Some delegates seemed surprised while others showed no reaction at all. Helen continued, her voice growing stronger. These were not soldiers. They were not threats. They were children, aged 6 to 12 years old, traveling with their families to start new lives on a peaceful colony world. The Zephyrians attacked an unarmed civilian ship and stole these children for experiments. The Altarian delegate, a creature that looked like a giant insect, leaned forward with interest. The Altarians were known for their strong family bonds and protection of their young. The Zephyrians claim they need these children for scientific research, Helen said, her voice now filled with controlled anger. They believe human children have special mental abilities that could help their own species. But let me be clear about what this really means. She paused and looked directly at the Zephyrian section of the chamber. They are torturing children. They are experimenting on babies. They have turned scientific curiosity into the worst kind of evil. And they expect us to accept this because they consider themselves superior to humans. The chamber erupted in noise as different species began talking among themselves. The Draknari delegate, a warrior race that valued honor above all else, stood up and roared his approval of Helen's words. Minister Kolvex, representing the Zephyrian Empire, rose from his seat. He was tall and thin like all Zephyrians, with gray skin and cold black eyes. When he spoke, his voice was calm and emotionless. The human delegate exaggerates the situation, he said. We have acquired test subjects from a primitive species for legitimate scientific research. The advancement of knowledge serves the greater good of all galactic civilization. Helen felt her anger boiling over, but she forced herself to remain calm. Test subjects? These are children with names, families, dreams, and futures. Emma Davis loves to draw pictures. Luke Thompson wants to be an engineer like his father. Maya Rodriguez writes stories about magical creatures. She turned to address the entire council. Every species in this chamber protects their young. It is the most basic instinct of any civilized being. The Zephyrians have violated this fundamental law of nature. Minister Kolvex interrupted her. Humans are a newly discovered species with no established rights in galactic law. Their emotional attachment to their offspring is irrelevant to scientific progress. These test subjects will contribute more to civilization as research materials than they ever could as free beings. The chamber fell completely silent. Even species that had seemed uninterested were now paying attention. Kolvex had just made a terrible mistake. The Altarian delegate was the first to respond. The Zephyrian position is unacceptable. Any species that harms children for research purposes cannot be trusted as members of this council. The Draknari delegate slammed his fist on his table. Honor demands that we protect the innocent. The Zephyrians have shown they have no honor. Even the normally neutral Centaurians began murmuring their disapproval. The plant-like beings valued all forms of life and were disturbed by the idea of experimenting on children. Helen saw her opportunity and pressed forward. The Zephyrians have revealed their true nature today. They see other species not as equals, but as materials to be used for their benefit. Today it is human children. Tomorrow it could be your children. More species began speaking out against the Zephyrians. The Aquatic Collective, the Silicon Brotherhood, and even the mysterious energy beings all expressed their concern about Zephyrian research methods. Minister Kolvex tried to regain control. These emotional outbursts prove why less developed species should not be involved in important decisions. The Zephyrian Empire has contributed more to galactic science than any other civilization. By stealing children, Helen shot back. By conducting experiments on beings who cannot consent? This is not science. This is barbarism disguised as research. The Crystalline Confederacy delegate, whose people had once been enslaved by another species, stood up. We have seen this justification before. Any species that claims superiority over others and uses that claim to harm innocents is a threat to all of us. Council Speaker Mordain called for order, but the chamber was in chaos. Species that had been neutral or even friendly to the Zephyrians were now questioning their alliance. Helen raised her voice above the noise. I am here today to deliver an ultimatum on behalf of humanity. The Zephyrian Empire has 72 hours to return our children unharmed. If they refuse, humanity will consider itself at war with the Zephyrian Empire. The chamber fell silent again. War declarations were rare in the Galactic Council, and they were never made lightly. Minister Kolvex laughed coldly. Humans are a primitive species with limited technology. They pose no threat to the Zephyrian Empire. Helen smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. Minister Kolvex, you have studied human biology, but you clearly know nothing about human nature. We may be new to your galactic community, but we are not helpless. And when someone threatens our children, we become very dangerous. The Draknari delegate roared his approval again. Any species that fights to protect their young has our respect. If the humans go to war over their stolen children, the Draknari will consider their cause just. Other species began voicing their support. The Altarians offered intelligence about Zephyrian military positions. The Centaurians promised medical aid for the rescued children. Even some smaller species offered whatever help they could provide. The Zephyrian delegation looked around the chamber with growing alarm. They had expected the council to support their right to conduct research. Instead, they found themselves isolated and facing potential enemies on all sides. Helen delivered her final statement. The Zephyrians believe humans are primitive because we care about our children more than scientific advancement. They think our emotions make us weak. They are about to discover how wrong they are. She turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving behind a council in turmoil. Species were choosing sides, alliances were forming and breaking, and the galaxy was preparing for its first major conflict in over a century. The message was clear. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and their first act was to declare war on anyone who threatened their children. The Zephyrians had awakened something they did not understand and could not control. The diplomatic phase was over. Now it was time for action. On the Zephyrian research station Kethmore, Dr. Zixnara stared at her latest experiment results with growing frustration. For the third day in a row, something had gone wrong with her tests. Equipment malfunctioned, samples were contaminated, and her research subjects seemed to know exactly when to cause the most disruption. The 50 human children had been on the station for 5 days now, and they were nothing like what she had expected. Most alien children became quiet and obedient within hours of capture. These humans were getting more organized and troublesome each day. Emma Davis sat in the corner of their holding room, quietly talking to the other children. At 8 years old, she had somehow become their leader. The older children listened to her ideas, and the younger ones felt safe when she was near. Today is Luke's turn to work on the electrical systems, she whispered to Maya Rodriguez. Maya, you need to pretend to be sick again during the afternoon tests. Alex, are you ready for your scouting mission? 6-year-old Alex Park nodded seriously. He had discovered that the ventilation shafts were just big enough for him to crawl through. While the aliens thought he was napping, he had been exploring the station and learning its secrets. I found where they keep their communication equipment, Alex whispered back. It's 3 levels up, in a room with lots of blinking lights. Emma smiled. Perfect. Luke, do you think you can reach it? 12-year-old Luke Thompson had been studying the alien technology for days. He was naturally good with electronics, and he had figured out some basic patterns in how the Zephyrian systems worked. I think so, Luke said. But I'll need a distraction. Something big enough to get all the guards away from that area. Maya Rodriguez had been drawing constantly since their capture. The aliens thought she was just scared and trying to comfort herself with art. They didn't realize she was actually mapping the entire station and noting guard patrol times. The guards change shifts at 1400 hours, Maya said, showing them her drawings. There's always a 15-minute gap when the north corridor is empty. Emma looked around at all 50 children in the room. They ranged in age from 6 to 14, and they came from different families and backgrounds. But they had all learned to work together like a team. Remember, Emma told them, we call this operation homework because we're teaching these aliens a lesson they'll never forget. Dr. Zixnara entered the room with her assistants carrying scanning equipment. She had decided to try a different approach with the human children. Instead of testing them in groups, she would isolate them individually. You will come with us, she said, pointing at Emma. The others will remain here. But as soon as Dr. Zixnara tried to separate Emma from the group, the other children began to protest loudly. They surrounded Emma, linking arms and refusing to let the aliens take her away. We stay together, Emma said firmly. If you want to study us, you study all of us. Dr. Zixnara was amazed. In all her years of research, she had never seen such young beings show this level of group loyalty and organization. Most species became competitive when faced with danger, fighting each other for better treatment from their captors. While Dr. Zixnara was distracted by the children's resistance, Luke Thompson was putting his own plan into action. He had noticed that the room's environmental controls were connected to the main power grid. Using a small piece of metal he had hidden in his shoe, he began to short-circuit the connections. The lights in the room flickered, then went out completely. Emergency lighting came on, bathing everything in a red glow. Alarms started ringing throughout the station. What is happening? Dr. Zixnara demanded, speaking into her communication device. Unknown power fluctuations in Sector 7, came the reply. Engineering teams are investigating. But Luke wasn't finished. Over the next hour, he caused 3 more power outages in different parts of the station. Each time, the aliens had to send technical teams to investigate, leaving other areas less guarded. Meanwhile, Alex Park was making his way through the ventilation system toward the communication room. The shafts were dark and cramped, but he was small and determined. He had memorized Maya's maps and knew exactly where to go. Maya Rodriguez was also doing her part. When Dr. Zixnara tried to conduct medical scans on the children, Maya suddenly began screaming and holding her stomach. She acted like she was in terrible pain. Something is wrong with this one, Dr. Zixnara told her assistants. Take her to the medical bay immediately. While the aliens were busy running medical tests on Maya, who was perfectly healthy, other children were free to continue their sabotage activities. Maya kept the medical staff busy for 2 hours, insisting that her pain kept moving to different parts of her body. The children had organized themselves into different teams. Some created distractions, others gathered information, and a few worked on actual sabotage. They communicated through hand signals and simple codes that the aliens couldn't understand. 14-year-old Sam Wilson had been watching the guards carefully. He noticed that they always checked certain areas at the same times each day. He shared this information with the other children, helping them plan their activities. 10-year-old Lisa Brown discovered that she could make herself throw up by thinking about really disgusting things. Every time the aliens tried to give the children strange medicines, Lisa would get sick, making the aliens think their drugs were dangerous. 9-year-old Carlos Garcia found that the aliens were afraid of loud noises. Whenever he screamed suddenly, all the guards would rush to see what was wrong. This gave other children chances to explore or cause mischief in other areas. The children's rebellion was working better than Emma had hoped. The aliens were spending more time dealing with problems than conducting research. Dr. Zixnara was becoming increasingly frustrated and confused. These humans are unlike any species we have studied, she reported to Commander Vextai. They show unprecedented levels of cooperation and intelligence for such young beings. They are primitive children, Vextai replied coldly. Continue the research. Their resistance is meaningless. But it wasn't meaningless. While the aliens were busy dealing with power outages, fake illnesses, and constant disruptions, Alex Park reached the communication room. Using the techniques Luke had taught him, he managed to activate the emergency broadcast system. The message was short and simple. This is Alex Park from Earth. We are 50 human children trapped on alien station. Please help us. Coordinates. Follow. The signal lasted only 30 seconds before the aliens cut it off, but it was enough. The message shot across space at the speed of light, reaching anyone who might be listening. Captain Lisa Chang, commanding the rescue fleet, was the first to receive Alex's transmission. She immediately ordered all ships to change course toward the coordinates the brave 6-year-old had provided. "Did you hear that?" she announced to her crew. "A 6-year-old child just gave us the location of the alien station. These kids aren't just surviving, they're fighting back." Back on the station, the aliens had discovered what Alex had done. They found him in the communication room and dragged him back to the holding area. Dr. Zixanara was furious. "How did such a young being access our systems?" she demanded. Emma stepped forward to protect Alex. "Because you underestimated us," she said simply. "You think we're just scared little kids, but you're wrong. We're humans, and humans never give up." Dr. Zixanara stared at the 8-year-old girl who spoke with such confidence. For the first time, she began to wonder if the Zephyrians had made a terrible mistake. The children had sent their message. Help was coming, and they weren't going to stop fighting until they were free. Admiral Rick Harrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the massive Zephyrian research station grow larger on the main screen. 12 human warships surrounded the asteroid base, their weapons powered up and ready for battle. "This is Admiral Harrison of the United Earth Defense Fleet," he broadcast to the station. "You have violated galactic law by kidnapping human children. Return them immediately, or face the consequences." Commander Vextai's cold voice came back through the communication system. "Human fleet, you are in Zephyrian space without permission. Leave now or we will destroy you." Rick smiled grimly. "Commander, you made a big mistake when you took our kids. You're about to learn why nobody should ever threaten human children." The battle began instantly. The Zephyrian station's defensive weapons opened fire, sending bright energy beams toward the human ships. But Captain Lisa Chang had studied alien technology for weeks and she was ready. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," she ordered from the Retribution. "Use pattern Delta 7. The human ships moved like dancers, spinning and weaving around the alien weapons. The Zephyrians had built their defenses to fight enemies who attacked in straight lines. They were not prepared for the creative tactics humans used. Captain Tony Reeves brought the Valkyrie in close to the station's main weapons array. "Target their power generators," he told his weapons officer. "Let's see how well they fight in the dark." Human missiles struck the station's external power sources, causing explosions that lit up space like fireworks. The Zephyrian defensive fire became weaker and less accurate. Inside the station, the 50 children felt the ship shake as the battle began. Emma Davis gathered all the children together in the center of their holding room. "Our people have come for us," she announced, "but we need to be ready to help ourselves." Dr. Zixanara ran into the room with several guards. "Take them to the secure area," she ordered. "They are too valuable to lose." But the children had other plans. As the guards approached, Luke Thompson triggered one final power overload. The lights went out, and emergency systems began blaring warnings throughout the station. In the darkness, the children moved like they had practiced. Alex Park led the smaller kids toward the ventilation shafts he had explored. Maya Rodriguez guided, others using her memorized maps of the station layout. Emma Davis made sure no child was left behind. Commander Vextai realized his station's defenses were failing. The human ships were too fast and too unpredictable. Their weapons were different from anything he had encountered before. "Use the research subjects as shields," he ordered Dr. Zixanara. "The humans will not risk harming their own young." But when Vextai's guards reached the holding room, they found it empty. The children had vanished into the station's maintenance areas, using passages too small for adult Zephyrians to follow. Captain Chang led the boarding party, that broke through the station's main airlock. Her Marines moved quickly through the corridors, following the layout information that Alex Park had transmitted in his brave message. The fighting inside the station was fierce, but brief. Human soldiers fought with a fury that surprised the Zephyrians. These were not just military personnel doing their jobs. They were protectors, fighting to save kidnapped children. Sergeant Bill Murphy kicked down the door to Dr. Zixanara's laboratory. Inside, he found computers full of research data about the captured children. The information made him sick with anger. "Sir," he radioed to Captain Chang, "you need to see what these monsters were planning to do to our kids." Meanwhile, Emma Davis was leading her group of children through the station's lower levels. They could hear the sounds of fighting above them, and they knew their rescuers were getting closer. "Stay together," Emma told the others. "We're almost free." They reached a large room filled with broken machinery. Emma recognized it as the area Alex had described in his scouting reports. They were directly below the main hangar where the rescue ships would try to land. Commander Vextai made his final desperate move. He cornered the children in the hangar area, holding an alien weapon that could stun or kill. "Human soldiers," he broadcast, "surrender now or I will harm these young ones." Captain Chang and her Marines entered the hangar carefully. They could see Vextai standing near a group of 50 children, his weapon pointed at them. But then something amazing happened. 8-year-old Emma Davis stepped forward, placing herself between the alien commander and the other children. "You won't hurt us anymore," she said in her small but strong voice. "We're not afraid of you." Luke Thompson moved up beside her, followed by Maya Rodriguez and Alex Park. Soon all 50 children were standing together facing the alien who had terrorized them for days. "You made a mistake," Emma told Vextai. "You thought human children were weak and helpless. But we fought back. We caused problems for your research, we contacted our families, and now we're going home." Vextai raised his weapon, but he hesitated. These young beings showed no fear, only determination. In that moment he realized that the Zephyrians had completely misunderstood human nature. That hesitation was all Captain Chang needed. Her Marines moved quickly, disarming Vextai and securing the area. The children were safe. "Is everyone okay?" Captain Chang asked, kneeling down to Emma's level. "We're fine," Emma replied. "We took care of each other, just like families do." The rescue was complete. All 50 children were brought aboard the human ships where medical teams checked them over. Despite their ordeal, they were healthy and strong. Dr. Zixanara was captured along with her research data. When human scientists studied her work, they were horrified by what the Zephyrians had planned. The aliens had intended to use the children's brain tissue for experiments that would have killed them. Commander Vextai died fighting rather than surrender, but his last words were recorded by the station's systems. "We underestimated them," he said. "They are not primitive, they are dangerous." The news of the successful rescue spread throughout human space within hours. The children became heroes, symbols of human courage and determination. Their story was told on every world, inspiring others and warning potential enemies. The Galactic Council condemned the Zephyrian Empire and imposed severe sanctions. Many species that had been allies of the Zephyrians cut off all contact. The Empire's government collapsed within months, replaced by leaders who promised to respect the rights of other species. Admiral Harrison stood with the children as their ships headed home to Earth. Emma Davis, still only 8 years old, had become the most famous child in human history. "What will you do when you grow up?" the Admiral asked her. Emma thought for a moment, then smiled. "I want to make sure this never happens to other children. Maybe I'll be a diplomat or a soldier or a scientist. Whatever it takes to keep families safe." The rescue fleet returned to Earth as heroes. The children were reunited with their families in emotional ceremonies watched by billions of people. They had survived an impossible situation and helped save themselves. But most importantly, they had shown the galaxy that humanity would go to any length to protect their young. The message was clear. Threatening human children was the worst mistake any species could make. The stars belonged to humanity now, and everyone knew it.